Welcome back to the channel Rare Coins History, Coin Lovers and Treasure Seekers. Today we're taking a deep dive into one of the most familiar coins in American pockets and purses, but with a twist that will make you look twice at your spare change. We're talking about the Jefferson Nickel from the year 1974. At first glance, it might seem like an ordinary 5-cent piece, something you'd toss into a vending machine or forget in a drawer. But what if I told you that some Jefferson Nickels from 1974 could be hiding serious value? Stay tuned as we uncover the story, the details, and the hidden fortune behind this classic American coin. Let's start with a bit of background. The Jefferson Nickel design has been around since 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. It features the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, on the obverse, and his legendary home, Monticello, on the reverse. By 1974, the coin had already been in circulation for decades, passing through millions of hands. The year itself, 1974, was one of political change and economic uncertainty in the United States. Inflation was rising, the cost of living was climbing, and people were using coins more than ever in everyday transactions. Nickel coins were being produced by the hundreds of millions, and most people never thought twice about saving or protecting them. But that's exactly why the rare survivors, those in extraordinary condition, have become so sought after today. When you look at the obverse of the 1974 Jefferson Nickel, you'll notice Jefferson's left-facing portrait, sharp cheekbones, his tied-back hair, and the proud American expression captured by designer Felix Schlag. Above his head are the words "In God We Trust," and to the left is the word "Liberty" followed by the year 1974, often with a small mint mark near the date depending on where it was struck. Flip the coin over and you're met with the image of Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia estate. The iconic neoclassical dome, the stairs, the windows, and the elegant facade have become a recognizable part of American coinage. Beneath it are the words 5 cents and United States of America, and above it sits the Latin motto E pluribus unum. These familiar details connect the coin to American history, patriotism, architecture, and legacy. Now most Jefferson Nickels from 1974 were struck for everyday use. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced massive quantities, and the San Francisco mint produced proof coins for collectors. Over time, circulation coins experienced wear, scratches, dings, discoloration, and loss of detail. Many ended up in parking meters, cash registers, jars in the kitchen, or coin rolls stored in banks. That's why the condition of a Jefferson nickel can make all the difference. Coins that were preserved in original rolls, proof sets, or mint sets stand out today because they've escaped the scratches and scuffs of time. Collectors are especially interested in high-grade examples with sharp strikes, clean surfaces, full steps on Monticello, and no major blemishes. The term full step refers to the clearly defined steps leading up to Monticello on the reverse. Most coins from the era lack full steps due to weaker strikes, die wear, or circulation damage. But the rare specimens that show all the steps in perfect clarity can command surprising premiums at auctions. Even tiny variations in mint marks, planchet quality, die cracks, or double die errors can make a huge difference in value. That's why people who understand the nuances of Jefferson Nickels carefully examine each one for hidden variations, especially coins from the 1970s. Now let's talk about the mint marks. In 1974, Philadelphia coins usually have no mint mark, Denver coins carry a small D, and San Francisco proof coins have an S. The Denver and Philadelphia nickels were intended for circulation, and most of them show signs of wear. But the rare uncirculated survivors, especially those graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC, can catch the eye of collectors. San Francisco proof coins often come with mirror-like surfaces and frosted designs, making them visually striking. However, even with proof coins, condition matters. Any scratches, haze, or handling damage can lower desirability. Coins kept in original proof sets in pristine condition tend to perform best, but what really sets the top-tier 1974 Jefferson Nickel apart is preservation combined with rarity of condition. Imagine a coin that has survived half a century without a single fingerprint, scratch, or nick. Imagine crisp details in Jefferson's hair, smooth fields with no contact marks, and Monticello shining with immaculate steps. Those are the coins that reach the top of grading scales like MS-66, MS-67, and even higher. When one of these gems appears on the collector market or at auction, competition gets intense. Enthusiasts, historians, and investors know that flawless coins from common years can be worth far more than you'd ever expect, and then there are the unexpected treasures, coins with double die obverse, die cracks on the building, misaligned strikes, clipped planchets, or unusual metal flaws. While errors on Jefferson Nickels are less famous than on pennies or quarters, they exist and can significantly increase a coin's desirability. Each error tells a story about the minting process and gives collectors something unique to chase. So what does this mean for the average person watching? It means that anywhere in your home, in old coin jars, in inherited boxes, or in those old paper rolls from the bank, there could be a Jefferson nickel from 1974 hiding in plain sight. If the coin has maintained its luster, sharpness, and full detail, or if it bears a rare variety or error, you could be staring at something far more valuable than 5 cents. People often discover these treasures while setting aside coins for fun, rolling change for a trip, or sorting through inherited belongings, and now comes the moment you've been waiting for. While most 1974 Jefferson Nickels are worth their face value or a few dollars in decent shape, the rarest high-grade specimens, the kind preserved in extraordinary condition with flawless surfaces and full details, have stunned collectors and auction houses. One of these exceptional coins reached the astonishing price of $77,000. Today we're diving into a coin that millions of Americans have spent, ignored, or stashed away in drawers without a second thought, the Jefferson Nickel from the year 1987. At first glance, it's just another 5-cent coin, simple, familiar, and part of everyday life. But as you're about to learn, looks can be deceiving. Some Jefferson Nickels from 1987 aren't just pieces of pocket change, they're hidden treasures that could be worth a staggering amount of money if they've survived in the right condition. Let's rewind to the late 1980s for a moment. The United States was in the middle of cultural change, economic development, and technological growth. The Cold War was nearing its end, pop culture icons were everywhere, and everyone used physical coins daily. In 1987 alone, the U.S. Mint produced hundreds of millions of nickels for circulation through the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and proof coins through the San Francisco Mint. Almost no one set them aside with the idea of long-term value, because people assumed nickels were too common to ever become collectible. But that lack of preservation is exactly what makes certain surviving examples rare today. The Jefferson Nickel has carried the same iconic design since its introduction in 1938. On the front is Thomas Jefferson, facing left with his tied-back hair and thoughtful expression. Just above him sits the motto "In God We Trust," while to the right you'll find the word Liberty followed by the date 1987. Depending on the mint that produced it, you'll see a small P for Philadelphia, a D for Denver, or an S for the San Francisco proof strike. Although these details might feel routine to someone glancing at the coin, collectors look at them as key clues when determining rarity and value. Now turn the coin over and you'll see Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia home. The building is centered with its iconic dome, windows, and columns appearing across the surface. Above it is the phrase E pluribus unum, and below it are the words United States of America and 5 cents. But here's where it gets interesting. The design might seem plain to the casual eye, but the level of sharpness, clarity, and precision in this image can mean the difference between a coin that's worth face value and one that can sell at auction for tens of thousands. While the majority of 1987 nickels have spent decades in circulation, tossed in pockets, mixed with keys, rubbed in coin rolls, or dropped into vending machines, a very small number were preserved with extraordinary care. These are the nickels that never made contact with other coins, never picked up scratches, dents, tarnish, or discoloration. They retained their full luster, original shine, and microscopic details. Collectors and professional graders use strict criteria to evaluate coins, focusing on features like Jefferson's hair, the smoothness of the fields, the sharpness of the lettering, and especially the steps of Monticello. The steps on Monticello are one of the most critical areas of detail. If all the steps are fully visible and sharply defined, the coin is considered a full-step example. That is incredibly hard to find on nickels from the 1980s due to softer strikes and the everyday handling these coins endured. A coin from 1987 with full steps, brilliant surfaces, and no marks is nearly impossible to come across, and that rarity drives up the price dramatically when one appears on the market. Then there are mint errors and oddities. Sometimes a coin is struck off-center, double-struck, or created with a die that wasn't aligned correctly or was worn out. Sometimes there are clipped planchets, die cracks, or missing elements in the design. These errors weren't intentional, but collectors love them because they're authentic, one-of-a-kind pieces of minting history. A 1987 Jefferson nickel with an error in pristine condition can rocket up in value far beyond what most people would ever imagine for a 5-cent coin, and let's not forget the proof coins. In 1987, the San Francisco Mint produced specially struck proof nickels intended for collectors. These coins feature mirror-like backgrounds, frosted raised images, and deep, sharp details. But even among proofs, condition matters. A perfectly preserved proof with no haze, no scratches, and flawless surfaces is worth significantly more than a proof with handling marks. So how can an everyday person benefit from this? The truth is, valuable coins don't always come from auctions or high-end dealers. They're discovered in inherited collections, in old coin rolls from the bank, in jars forgotten in kitchen cupboards, and in the change that's been sitting untouched for years. If someone has a 1987 Jefferson nickel that has somehow avoided damage, maybe one that was pulled from circulation early, kept in a set, or stored properly, it could end up being far more than just pocket change. Even rolls of coins purchased decades ago and forgotten in safes or desk drawers can hold something special. Imagine opening a dusty roll of nickels your parents or grandparents saved without thinking, and finding a nearly perfect 1987 nickel with full steps and blazing original luster. That's the kind of discovery collectors dream about, and it has happened more often than you might guess. The reality is that people often underestimate the value hidden in the smallest coins. They assume only gold, silver, or ancient money is worth collecting. But modern nickels like those from 1987 can produce major surprises in the right condition. Auction records have shown that rare survivors with exceptional grading can command prices that defy expectations, especially when the supply of high-grade examples is tiny compared to the total number minted. And this brings us to the moment you've been waiting for. While the vast majority of 1987 Jefferson nickels are worth only their face value, the top-tier examples in pristine, untouched, professionally graded condition have stunned collectors with their selling price. One of these rare coins reached an unbelievable value of $70,000. Today's journey takes us deep into the world of United States coinage, where a small 5-cent piece from decades ago is turning heads, catching collectors' attention, and in rare cases, bringing in jaw-dropping prices. We're talking about the Jefferson nickel from the year 1971, a coin so common in circulation back then that millions of Americans handled it daily without giving it a second thought. But time has a funny way of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, and this little nickel has a lot more going on than people realize. Before diving into its hidden value, let's first rewind the clock. The Jefferson Nickel series began in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. It featured the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, on the front, and his famous home, Monticello, on the back. The 1971 issue continued that tradition, produced by the Philadelphia and Denver mints. These coins were used constantly in everyday life, buying snacks, making change at gas stations, tipping, and piling up in pockets and piggy banks across the country. Because of their practical use, very few were preserved in pristine condition. Most have scratches, wear on Jefferson's hair, flattened steps on Monticello, or discoloration from decades of circulation. The metal composition of the 1971 nickel is the same as most nickels of its time, 75% copper and 25% nickel. While it doesn't contain silver or precious metals, its modern value comes from condition, rarity, strikes, and overlooked varieties. And this is where the excitement begins. Millions of nickels were minted in 1971, but the vast majority are worth only face value unless they fall into an exceptional category. It's those special survivors that have managed to stand the test of time, coins that somehow avoided the wear and tear of cash registers, vending machines, and coin jars, that leave collectors speechless. Some Jefferson Nickels from 1971 have extremely sharp details known as full steps. This refers specifically to the steps of Monticello on the reverse side of the coin. If you look closely at most nickels, the steps appear flat or blurry because the strikes weren't strong enough or the coins wore down quickly. But a full steps example shows all the lines of the staircase in crisp, complete detail. That tiny characteristic can skyrocket a coin's value because full steps nickels are much harder to find, especially from the 1970s. Even rarer are nickels that show both high-grade condition and full steps simultaneously. These are the kinds of coins that serious collectors hunt, and pay top dollar, for, but condition isn't the only factor. Errors from the minting process can create rare and collectible pieces. Some 1971 Jefferson Nickels exhibit double die errors, where the design looks slightly doubled, especially around the lettering or Jefferson's eye. Others may have off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or unusual die rotations. Even small errors, when paired with high condition, can make a coin incredibly desirable. These mistakes were never intended to reach circulation, but a few slipped through, and now they serve as unique relics of minting history. Now let's talk about grading. A coin in average circulated condition might only be worth 5 cents. But a coin that has never been in circulation, with smooth surfaces, original mint luster, no scratches, and fantastic eye appeal, is a completely different story. Coins graded in mint state 65, 66, or higher are where the real value begins to appear. And if you add full steps to that, the price multiplies fast. Only a tiny percentage of 1971 nickels have been preserved in that kind of flawless condition. Most people never check their change carefully enough to notice a coin like that, and even fewer think to have it professionally graded. Imagine finding a shiny Jefferson nickel from 1971 with no obvious signs of wear, clean fields, sharp strike, and bold steps on Monticello. That could be a jackpot hiding in plain sight. Some collectors don't even realize what they have until they send it in for grading. Over the years, enthusiasts and dealers have paid startling amounts for high-end examples, especially those with remarkable eye appeal and flawless steps. And because these coins weren't originally considered special, very few people saved them when they were first released. Most were used and abused, making untouched survivors incredibly scarce today. Collectors often search rolls of old nickels from banks, estate sales, coin hoards, and inherited collections, hoping to uncover that one coin that sets them apart. The thrill of discovery is real, especially when a 5-cent coin turns out to be exceptionally valuable. That is the beauty of numismatics, the hunt, the history, and the hope that the next coin you inspect might be extraordinary. The 1971 Jefferson nickel is a perfect example of how an everyday coin can transform into a treasure if it meets the right conditions. So, what should you look for if you want to check your own nickels? Start with the date, 1971, then inspect the condition under good lighting. Look at Jefferson's cheek, hair, and jawline for smoothness and clarity. Turn it over and zoom in on the steps of Monticello. If the lines are distinct and uninterrupted, you might be looking at a full steps example. If the coin has strong luster and no signs of handling, you could be holding something extremely valuable. And don't forget to check for oddities like doubling or alignment issues. Even a small flaw can significantly raise its desirability if it's the right kind. Many coin owners have unknowingly kept valuable nickels mixed with regular change, in storage jars, or tucked away in old drawers. Inherited coin boxes sometimes contain overlooked treasures that belonged to parents or grandparents who collected casually or saved loose change without knowing what was inside. It's always worth revisiting old collections with fresh eyes and new knowledge, especially considering how much attention Jefferson Nickels have been getting from modern collectors. Today we're diving into a coin that nearly every American has seen, spent, or overlooked without a second thought. It's a small piece of metal that once jingled in nearly every pocket, sat in piggy banks, and rolled through cash drawers across the country. We're talking about the Jefferson Nickel from 1964, a coin with more history, mystery, and hidden value than most people realize. And by the time you finish this video, you'll know exactly why collectors are scrambling to find the rare survivors from this year, and what unbelievable prices they can reach. To understand why the 1964 Jefferson Nickel has become so significant, you need to look at the moment in time when it was minted. The United States was in the middle of a major shift. Silver was being removed from circulating dimes, quarters, and half dollars starting in 1965, so the years just before that were marked by high demand for coinage. In 1964 alone, an enormous number of nickels were produced by both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. In fact, tens of millions were struck that year, the highest mintage of any nickel at the time. They were made quickly to meet circulation needs, which meant few people bothered to save them in perfect condition. Most were used immediately in day-to-day life, tossed into cash registers, spent on bus fares, used in vending machines, and dropped into coin jars. The overwhelming majority show signs of heavy wear today, but while 1964 nickels are common in worn condition, finding one in pristine, untouched, or high mint state condition is incredibly rare. They were not treated as collectible coins when they were issued, and the public was more focused on saving their silver coins, not nickels. As a result, mint-fresh examples that survived without scratches, contact marks, or fading are now extremely tough to track down. Collectors especially look for coins with sharp strikes and crisp detail on Monticello, the building featured on the reverse. The most desirable examples have what experts call full steps, meaning all the steps on Monticello are clearly defined and unbroken. Most nickels from this year do not show these details because of softer strikes and mass production. Spotting a genuine full steps 1964 nickel is like uncovering a secret treasure. There's more to the story, though. The 1964 Jefferson Nickel was minted without a mint mark in Philadelphia and with a small d for Denver. However, even among these, certain die variations and striking errors make some coins far more valuable than others. Some have double dies, where the letters or features appear slightly doubled under magnification. Others show off-center strikes, planchet flaws, or die breaks. These minting errors weren't intentional, but they escaped detection and made their way into circulation. Collectors go crazy for such oddities, especially when the coin itself is in outstanding condition. This particular year also connects directly to one of the biggest coin changes in modern U.S. history. When silver was removed from dimes, quarters, and half dollars the next year, attention shifted, and most people paid no mind to nickels at all. That lack of awareness is one reason why fewer high-grade examples were preserved. People didn't save them in bank rolls, flips, or protective holders. Kids spent them on bubble gum, parents used them for laundry machines, and cashiers handled them daily without care. Decades of circulation left countless scratches, dull finishes, and flattened features. But a handful escaped all of that. If you're sorting through old coins from inherited collections, change jars, estate boxes, or even coins pulled from circulation years ago, there's a chance, though small, that a desirable 1964 Jefferson Nickel could be hiding among them. What makes the hunt exciting is that the coin doesn't look flashy at first glance. There's no silver shine, no gold coloration, nothing that screams value. But its worth comes from grade, preservation, and in rare cases, eye-popping detail. High mint state coins with mirror-like luster, flawless surfaces, or perfectly struck devices are what serious collectors fight over. Imagine flipping the coin over and seeing every step on Monticello clearly separated, with no wear, no interruptions, and strong edges around the lettering. Imagine the obverse showing Jefferson's portrait with complete hair detail, a clean cheek, and no scratches across the fields. Coins like this don't just stand out, they dominate auction lists and leave collectors stunned. Many beginners think a nickel must contain silver to have value, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The highest prices ever paid for Jefferson Nickels came from dates and conditions that shocked even experienced dealers. The thrill of hunting down an exceptional 1964 nickel lies in the fact that so few people know how valuable ultra-high-quality ones can be. They're not the kind of coin you immediately suspect. And yet, when combined with strong strike quality, mint preservation, and sometimes a unique die variety or error, the price tag can escalate to unbelievable levels. Today we're diving into a coin that most people have spent, ignored, or walked past without realizing the silent potential hiding in plain sight. It's a 5-cent piece that has traveled through pockets, purses, cash registers, gas stations, diners, vending machines, and piggy banks for decades. We're talking about the United States Jefferson Nickel from the year 1973. At first glance, it looks like any other nickel, small, silver-toned, and ordinary. But in the right condition and with the right features, this seemingly simple coin can deliver a shockingly high return, the kind you would never expect from something worth just 5 cents when it was made. To understand why this coin has become surprisingly collectible, you have to step back into the early 1970s. It was a time of change in American culture, technology, and industry. The U.S. Mint was working hard to keep up with demand as cash-driven transactions were still dominant in everyday life. Debit cards, online payments, and modern currency use didn't exist yet the way they do now. In 1973, the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced millions of Jefferson Nickels to keep the economy moving smoothly. But like most circulating coins, they weren't made with rarity in mind. They were made fast, used fast, and forgotten just as fast. The design stayed true to the original series that began in 1938. Thomas Jefferson's portrait dominates the obverse, facing left with the inscriptions Liberty and the date nearby. On the reverse sits Monticello, Jefferson's iconic Virginia estate, surrounded by the country's name, the coin's denomination, and the Latin motto E pluribus unum. The alloy was the standard mix used for decades, 75% copper and 25% nickel, and because there was no silver or precious metal content, no one thought to save vast quantities of these coins when they were new. Most were shoved into circulation and handled by countless hands over the next several decades, but while millions were made, very few survived in flawless or near-perfect condition. Almost every 1973 nickel you find in daily life today has scratches, flattened steps, dull luster, or dings from coin-counting machines and circulation wear. The difference between an ordinary 5-cent piece and a rare collector's dream often comes down to strike quality, surface preservation, and the presence of a special feature that only experienced collectors know to look for. One of the biggest keys to unlocking value is finding a Jefferson nickel with strongly defined full steps on Monticello. That refers to the staircase on the reverse of the coin. If the lines of the steps are clear, uninterrupted, and sharply struck, the coin immediately jumps in value. Most 1973 nickels don't have this level of detail because of rushed minting and weak strikes. A full steps nickel from this year is already a rare find, but when you combine that with exceptional grade, you step into territory where collectors will fiercely compete to own it. There's also the potential for rare minting errors that elevate certain coins far above the rest. Some 1973 nickels show doubling in the lettering or design details when examined under magnification. Others display planchet flaws, clipped edges, misaligned strikes, or die cracks. These errors weren't intended to exist, but the few that escaped the mint and survived in excellent condition are now considered unique collectibles. People might overlook such a coin their whole life, not realizing that a small striking error paired with strong eye appeal can multiply the value dramatically, but the real determining factor for serious money is grading. Coins are judged on a scale that measures wear, luster, contact marks, and clarity. A 1973 nickel that has been in circulation for decades is usually worth just 5 cents. But imagine one that was never used, saved from the very beginning, and stored away untouched. The surfaces would be clean and shiny, Jefferson's jawline and hair would remain crisp, and Monticello would retain lines so sharp that every detail stands out. With a professional grading designation in mint state 65, 66, or especially 67 or higher, the value isn't just impressive, it's shocking. Add the full steps designation and suddenly you're dealing with a specimen that separates itself from millions of average coins. Most people have had these nickels pass through their hands. They've been tossed in change bowls, slid across counters, used for arcade machines, and forgotten in drawers. But somewhere out there are a small number of coins that managed to avoid wear entirely. Maybe someone pulled one from a fresh roll at a bank and slipped it into a protective holder. Maybe a collector decades ago tucked away rolls of nickels without even knowing that future generations would one day search for survivors of exceptional quality. Maybe a family has a stash of coins inherited from a grandparent, untouched for years, sitting quietly in a box, just waiting for someone to take a closer look. That's what makes this hobby exciting. You never know when one coin among thousands will stand out. You might find a 1973 nickel with incredible luster, perfectly struck details, and no scratches, exactly the kind that grabs attention at grading services and coin auctions. The thrill comes not from how the coin looks to the casual eye, but how much it stands out to trained collectors. And every year, more people begin checking their stored coins, their inherited jars, and their tucked-away rolls to see if they might have one of those elusive high-grade Jefferson Nickels from the early 70s. The surprising truth is that even though 1973 nickels aren't old enough to seem antique and don't contain precious metal, their rarity and top condition gives them outstanding value. The combination of strong strikes, perfect preservation, and the right design characteristics can transform this 5-cent piece into something worth a shocking amount. And when the right coin appears at auction, collectors don't hold back. They know how rare a flawless example truly is.